Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another FileCloud Q&A session. I am joined once again by Jason Dover, our Chief Product Officer at FileCloud. How are you today, Jason?
Pretty good. How's it going today, Katie?
It's going. The day is progressing. We are going to talk about storage solutions today. That is the topic. So I'm going to jump right into it. And we're going to be starting with how it directly relates to FileCloud. So we're going right into the meat. How does FileCloud integrate with enterprise storage solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question, Katie. Most of the customers that we work with, they already have storage solutions embedded in their ecosystem, right? You're never going to a company unless it's a brand new startup that has nothing, right? And over the years, through integrations, through acquisitions, through IT teams trying different types of offerings, you're likely to have a very distributed storage ecosystem. This is a challenge that many IT organizations are actually faced with, is how to unify these things into one. And so from a file cloud perspective, we have two approaches on how we'll plug into a customer environment, right? You can deploy our product where you're going to try to basically make a fresh start, right? We call that approach managed storage, where we will connect to your backend storage ecosystem, but we manage the file system effectively. We are the file system in that case. And so all of your content that you're storing on a go forward, you have to come through the file cloud door in order to put stuff in or in order to take it out, right? Um, the nature of the files is hidden if you were to just go look at it directly at the storage, because you need the keys and the information that we have in the database to unlock, to decrypt, and so forth and so on. And so we have some customers that go that route. They say, we have this cacophony of different solutions, we're getting rid of them, and we're going to manage this all with one unified enterprise file sharing and sync solution. There's another approach, though, right, that doesn't require a wholesale migration, right? And we call this model the network storage or network folder model, where you may have your file systems already in place on Linux, Windows, what have you. You may have a lot of processes already implemented for direct access to that content. You may have other applications that engage with it, copies and different things that happen automatically. But you still want to have something in place mainly for your user access, right? Where you want to control that. You want to allow people to easily access it from mobile. You want people to easily access that content from their desktops. You do want to wrap some security around it, but you don't want to restrict the access and the interaction with the content to exclusively being through FileCloud. You want to still be able to go around the back, come in the side door, and still get at the data. And that's where we can operate in an overlay mode, as noted, that we call network folders or network storage. We simply integrate with what you already have there, but your file shares that you already have in place are going to still be accessible as they historically were. It's kind of a hybrid approach. And these are the two ways that we'll typically plug into a customer's existing environment.
I'm hearing that there are two very strong choices that a customer could take regarding how they work with their data. But there are so many different options when you go beneath the surface of those two basic options. And it depends on, like you were saying, if a customer has a brand new organization or they're starting from scratch, they want to start fresh. That's one situation. But on the other side, there are plenty of organizations out there who are going to have a variety of sources of data that they're going to want to try to pull in. And through all of the different use cases, all of the different ways of engaging with data and leveraging, accessing that data, how does a customer choose the right approach, especially when they're presented with so many different options from so many different vendors?
That is a challenge that customers face. I used to be on the customer side, and sometimes vendors provide so many options, you don't really know what to pick, and it's hard to map it to your specific scenario. For what we're talking about, there's a couple factors. A first factor is how much data do you actually have, right? And that managed storage model that I described, you would literally have to move your content from wherever it is into the FileCloud system. If you've got petabytes and petabytes and petabytes of data, that just may not be practical. You may not want to allocate the resources and time required for actually going through that process. And so that's typically one of the decision factors that come in when we're working with customers. The other would be your usage and access patterns. Today, FileCloud's primary use cases is about user to machine interaction, a little bit less so around machine to machine interaction. There are some things we're looking at on the roadmap in that secondary category, but right now that's really where we're focusing on. So if you've got a lot of use cases for direct machine to machine communications, well, you may need to go with the overlay model that I described, such that you still have direct access to the data when you go directly to the storage, as opposed to coming through the file cloud door. The other is going to be security and compliance, right? There are some customers that do have large amounts of data, but they do go through the process of that migration into our managed storage model because they need to ensure that there is only one door in and out into their file system, right? And these would be customers that fall into categories where there's strict compliance and governance requirements. Perhaps they have to meet certain standards or policies, and they need to be able to prove to auditors that they're doing this full stop. And they want to entrust the keys of doing that to the FileCloud system. So that will be another factor that goes into the decision making on which approach is leveraged.
For companies utilizing software-defined storage, which already likely comes with data provisioning and network access, does it make sense to also implement an EFSS?
That's a good question. And again, the things can be confusing. There's so many acronyms, there's so many technologies and frameworks that are being promoted. Sometimes it's difficult to map those directly to a customer use case. The answer to your question, though, is yes, because software-defined storage and enterprise file sync and sharing ultimately serve two different purposes, right? Software-defined storage is really it's an architecture, right? It's an architecture of separating your storage hardware that's underlying the environment from the software that's on top of it, right? This enables greater programmability. This allows for cheaper, dumber hardware to be leveraged because the intelligence really is in the software. Now, of course, this is the concept. It does get more integrated than that, especially from different technology vendors. There are hardware requirements to do what they want to do in the software, but that's the basic principle, and it's becoming the popular approach for how people think about modernizing their storage environments. Enterprise file sharing and sync is less about the infrastructure, and it acts or participates more at the application level. It's about how the end users are going to interact with the system, how they're going to access files. It's about providing access to content, rules, and policies on how it's engaged with. And so we see quite a lot where customers have deployed or migrated or are migrating to a software-defined solution for their storage, and they're using our products along with it. And in fact, we're working with some technology partners where we're building tighter integrations, right? So there's a unified solution of moving to their software-defined storage approach, but then that's integrated with FileCloud for us to publish the content that's in your stores to your end users. This now provides you a one-stop solution for being able to access the content securely via your mobile device. It enables a one-stop shop for being able to securely access that content outside of the VPN and outside of the firewall without a need for VPN for accessing the content. These are things that you typically can't do exclusively with the backend storage solution that you've put in place. You're going to need some intelligent layer on top of it in order to enable that. So absolutely, software-defined storage plus enterprise file sharing and sync makes absolute sense.
That's so interesting to think about because when we think about technology and the ways that we interact with data, the answer is almost going to be different depending on how you present it and who you're talking to. So, the way that a data manager or a data protection officer looks at the challenge of leveraging data, it's going to be vastly different from how somebody on a legal team who needs to look through documents that are stored, if they're looking for a particular case number, or even compliance related like PII, their reason for accessing that data and leveraging that data is going to be so different. And that, I think, goes to your point where you can have these different elements of infrastructure that come together and they're all useful because they are implemented for different reasons. It's like you were saying, like you can have a unified platform, you can have that surface level access to data, but then there's also the back end. But just a way of synthesizing this data and bringing it all together, it is a very complex infrastructure, but it doesn't have to feel like it. It doesn't have to cost like a complex infrastructure. So just the options that are available on the table and how we make those options work for enterprises. I think this is something that's very interesting.
I know that our customers, as they're engaging, they have all these different constituents that they have to serve, right? The in client, depending on what department they have, are going to have requirements. The infrastructure people, right? They're trying to make sure the data is in the right place and accessible for the application developers. The app devs kind of don't care about it. Compliance and security, I've got a different. So this is a really complex space, right? Because there's so many different angles at
Mhm.
content makes matters, right? Depending on where you are in the organization. So IT admins have a really difficult challenge.
So you're alluding to one of the challenges that a customer might face when it comes to software-defined storage and infrastructure in general. But what are some of the other challenges that they might have to overcome in this space?
Yeah, there's a number of challenges. Cost, of course, is going to be one of the primary ones. We know that the amount of data that enterprises are creating is increasing exponentially year on year, and so with that, storage costs obviously are going up as well. This, in fact, is one of the drivers for object storage now becoming a primary storage, right? Historically, once that concept, of course, it was born in public cloud, uh, started to gain popularity in private cloud deployments as well. But initially, because of just where the technology was and a variety of other reasons, it was really only seen as something you'd use for secondary storage use cases, right? So I'm doing some post-processing analytics, and maybe that content gets put over into object storage. I'm doing backup, I'm doing archive, I'm doing things like that. However, as the technology has advanced, as storage vendors have invested more in it, as it's gotten faster, it's being looked at for primary storage use cases as well, like where my users' personal drives are, where my core application data exists for my production apps, partly because of the cost model of it. It's a cheaper and more scalable approach than some other storage models. So that's certainly one of the first key challenges. Connected to that in some ways is getting intelligence out of the content that you actually have in your environment. Of course, we know the common phrases being thrown around in marketing these days that every company is now a technology company, and it's an overused trope, but it's true to some degree. Leveraging the content and leveraging the data that you have and turning that into a real asset is something that most companies across most industries are interested in. So I've got all this data that exists in my ecosystem, private, public cloud. How do I harness that and start to get some insights, perhaps some level of analytics out of it? Well, I can only do that if I A, know what I have, B, it's accessible, C, there's some level of classification or bucketing that's happening, so that I can look at it in an intelligent way, right? And so that's another challenge that's being faced. And the third would be proximity. So making sure that data is in the right place at the right time for applications, right? At some point, once public clouds started to become more popular, there was this thought that all applications, 90%, 95% of applications are going to move to the cloud, and you're going to have this multi-cloud approach where part of your application might be in Azure, part of it might be in AWS, and that's going to be based on a tariff model of where things are cheaper at a given point in time. There are some organizations that actually have done it, that are very skilled, that have the right engineering teams, the right infrastructure, the right budget to actually make that work. But that did not become a standard model as some had predicted if we go back a decade plus. And part of that is data proximity. I need to make sure the data is in the right place at the right time for applications to execute. And so that's really more what we're seeing, is that customers are putting things in the right place. They're looking for the best execution venue for specific applications and workloads and use cases. But these are just some of the challenges that folks responsible for the storage ecosystem are having to manage and face. And we're certainly looking to do our part to help to simplify some of those things for them.
So those are not insignificant challenges. I mean, as you mentioned, we've got the challenge of managing a complex infrastructure, the challenge of cost and budget, the challenge of data sprawl, the challenge then of leveraging that huge mountain of data, and then the challenge of access and proximity. So with that list, this laundry list of challenges, what are some of the unique ways that FileCloud can help an enterprise manage and respond to these challenges?
Yeah, we touched on some of them earlier, but that one scenario or one use case of VPN-less access,
Hmm.
it- right? So you've got your data and content and storage ecosystem all set up, enabling your users to be able to get at that content, whether they're in the boundaries of the firewall or they're working remotely on a plane, what have you, and being able to still do that in a secure way where your policies are still going to be applied. That's a primary benefit and reason why customers leverage us for sure. uh, the fact that we are bringing in the security and compliance umbrella, I would say, that
Mhm.
we wrap around that ecosystem so that you can be compliant, you can satisfy the information security requirements that your organization has, while still providing the simplicity and ease of use of one-click sharing capabilities within the ecosystem. That's certainly another a big benefit that we bring to the table, and a core reason why people choose us. Flexibility, right? So we spoke about right at the top that you've got these different options on how you're going to implement our solution inside of your environment. You can go through a wholesale migration of your data from where it exists into the FileCloud system. You can also leverage us in this overlay mode. So whether it's a greenfield new project or not, we have solutions that's available for you there. And I'd say lastly, one of the other key things that we're seeing gain popularity is integration of our product into automation workflows, right? And that's something that we're continuing to work on in the product itself, on allowing you to automate the things that need to happen with your content. As an example, we just announced last week the acquisition of another company that we're happy to welcome to the fold, Seniority. They bring e-signature capabilities to the product portfolio. And so that's one step that typically needs to be automated as you're managing your day two operations with content. And so these are just some of the things that we bring as benefits and why customers look to bring us in as part of their overall storage and data strategy.
It's very exciting, as you mentioned, the the acquisition of Synority and the ability to offer e-signature. That is something that comes up a lot, but all of the other solutions that you were talking about, there's so much potential here to bring in all of this data. It's the heart of everything that we do. So making sure that we can access it, that it can be stored, that it can be managed. It's interesting and fascinating how this continues to develop.
Absolutely. So that's something we're definitely continuing to focus on, creating more customer value. So we're gonna look forward to chatting more with you on the topic soon.
Thank you so much for your time, Jason. And thank you all for joining us. Until next time.